Hey guys, tonight we're taking a very special, very serene journey, not to a dusty battlefield or a bustling marketplace, but to a place of unbelievable beauty and ingenious human endeavor. Imagine, if you will, the vast shimmering expanse of a grand lake, reflecting the deep blue of the sky. Now, picture a colossal city, not just beside the lake, but seemingly floating upon its very surface. This isn't a fantasy, it's Tenochtitlan, the magnificent capital of the Aztec Empire, a true Venice of the Americas, built entirely in the heart of a shimmering, watery world. You can almost hear the gentle lapping of the water against canoe hulls, the rustle of reeds, and the distant echoing chants from colossal temples that pierce the humid air. It's a breathtaking sight, a testament to human ingenuity. But let's be honest, navigating a city built on a lake without modern bridges or GPS, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes without getting delightfully lost, or perhaps mistaken for a sacrificial offering. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're up for it, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's 12:24 p.m. on Friday, May 18th, 2025 here in Hanoi, and it's always wild to see where everyone's tuning in from as the world spins. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself drifting back through the centuries, to the heart of what is now Mexico. This isn't a dusty desert. This is the Valley of Mexico, a high-altitude basin nestled amidst towering volcanoes, a place of extraordinary natural beauty, and, crucially for our story, this valley was, for millennia, dominated by a vast system of interconnected lakes. Imagine 5 distinct lakes, some freshwater, some saline, all shimmering together, forming a colossal inland sea. The largest of these was Lake Texcoco, a massive, shallow body of water that would become the canvas for one of humanity's most remarkable agricultural innovations. It was into this unique, watery landscape that the Mexica people, who would become known as the Aztecs, arrived in the 13th century. They were a nomadic tribe, seeking a permanent home, often pushed to the fringes by more established city-states already dotting the fertile shores of the lakes. According to their own prophecies and legends, they were destined to build their great city where they saw an eagle perched on a prickly pear cactus, devouring a snake. A pretty specific instruction, if you ask me. Imagine trying to find that exact scene today, probably leading to a lot of confused birdwatchers. And find it they did. Or so the story goes. On a small, marshy island in the western part of Lake Texcoco in 1325 CE. This was not a prime piece of real estate, if we're honest. It was a swampy, inhospitable island, seemingly chosen out of desperation and religious prophecy rather than practical advantage. But the Mexica were not easily deterred. They looked at this watery wilderness not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity, a canvas for their audacious vision. Their audacity gave birth to Tenochtitlan, a city that would grow from a humble island settlement into the magnificent capital of a sprawling empire. This wasn't just a city by the lake, it was a city of the lake. The Aztecs didn't drain the water, they built on it, around it, and within it. They dredged canals, created causeways connecting the island to the mainland, and gradually, painstakingly, expanded their city outwards onto artificial land. You can almost feel the soft, marshy ground underfoot, the constant effort required to stabilize solid ground from shifting mud. A mainstream historical fact is that Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire, was indeed built on an island in the saline Lake Texcoco in the Valley of Mexico. Starting in 1325 CE, its strategic location provided natural defenses, but presented immense challenges for construction, freshwater supply, and, most critically, feeding a rapidly growing urban population. The challenges were immense. How do you build colossal temples and bustling markets on shifting lakebed? How do you provide fresh water for thousands of people when your city is surrounded by saline water? And most importantly for our story tonight, how do you feed an empire that is rapidly growing, whose capital is an island far removed from vast tracts of traditional farmland? These were not trivial problems. They were monumental engineering and agricultural puzzles that the Aztecs faced every single day. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, the Valley of Mexico's lake system wasn't static. It had natural fluctuations, and the saline nature of Lake Texcoco in particular posed a constant threat to fresh water supplies and stable building foundations. The Aztecs had to build massive dikes and dams, like the Nezahualcóyotl dike, to separate freshwater zones from saltwater, creating what was effectively an ancient, colossal water management system. Imagine trying to build a giant wall across a lake with only rudimentary tools. It's like building the Great Wall of China, but underwater, and with more risk of a very soggy lunch. Historians still argue whether the exact size of Tenochtitlan's population at its peak before the Spanish conquest was closer to $200,000 or a staggering 400,000 inhabitants, making it one of the largest cities in the world at the time. This debate highlights the sheer scale of the logistical challenge involved in sustaining such an urban behemoth. The success of Tenochtitlan, its very existence as a vibrant, powerful hub, depended on its ability to overcome these environmental obstacles. And the primary, most ingenious solution to its food challenge lies at the heart of our story tonight, a marvel of ancient agriculture that turned water into the most fertile land imaginable. You're ready to see how they truly made the impossible bloom, aren't you? As you let the shimmering image of Tenochtitlan, that audacious city built on the waters of Lake Texcoco, settle in your mind, a crucial question naturally arises. A city of perhaps 250,000, or even a staggering 400,000 souls, bustling with life, ceremonies, and trade. How on earth do you feed all those people? This wasn't just a challenge, it was an epic need, a logistical nightmare, and the very foundation upon which the city's survival and the empire's power rested. Imagine the sheer volume of food required every single day. A city the size of ancient Tenochtitlan would consume mountains of maize, rivers of beans, and entire landscapes of squash and chili peppers. We're talking about hundreds of tons of produce, day in and day out, to keep those hundreds of thousands of stomachs satisfied. And remember, this magnificent capital was an island, initially small and swampy, surrounded by water, not vast tracts of traditional arable land. It's like building a skyscraper in the middle of the ocean, and then realizing you forgot to pack enough snacks for everyone? Oops. The Aztec diet was fundamentally reliant on a few key staple crops. Maize, or corn, was the undisputed king. Consumed in myriad forms from tortillas and tamales to gruel, beans provided essential protein, while squash, chili peppers, tomatoes, and various other vegetables added flavor and nutrition. Unlike many Old World civilizations, the Aztecs didn't have large domesticated animals like cattle, pigs, or sheep to provide meat and dairy on a grand scale. Their protein sources were smaller animals like turkeys and dogs. Yes, they ate dogs, don't ask. It was a different time, as well as fish, insects, and wild game from the surrounding environment. This meant that the burden on plant-based agriculture was even more immense, requiring an almost unimaginable output of calories from the earth, or, in this case, from the water. So, the problem was stark: a massive, rapidly growing urban population on a limited island, needing an endless supply of nutrient-dense food, with no easy access to vast terrestrial farmlands. The traditional method of simply farming the dry land on the mainland and shipping the produce across the lake would have been inefficient, costly, and vulnerable. As Tenochtitlan grew, relying solely on tribute from conquered territories would also have become unsustainable, as even conquered peoples had their own mouths to feed. The empire needed a local, reliable, and incredibly productive food source, something that could defy the very limitations of their watery geography. A mainstream historical fact here is that maize corn was indeed the cornerstone of the Aztec diet, and sustaining the dense population of Tenochtitlan required an agricultural output of immense scale. far beyond what traditional island farming could provide. This forced the Aztecs to innovate and develop highly intensive farming methods unique to their lake environment. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine the sheer logistical challenge of pest control in such a dense, urban agricultural system without modern chemicals. Farmers had to rely on natural methods, careful observation, and perhaps even some ancient Aztec ingenuity to protect their precious crops from insects, birds, and rodents. One can almost picture a slightly exasperated Chinampero Chinampa farmer trying to shoo away a particularly persistent flock of birds from his corn, perhaps shouting ancient Aztec curses that mostly just confused the birds. Get off my crops, you feathered fiends, before I legally declare you a nuisance at the next Kalpuli meeting. The quest for food security wasn't just about preventing hunger, it was about maintaining stability. A well-fed populace is a happy, productive populace. A hungry populace is a recipe for unrest, rebellion, and the unraveling of an empire. The ability to feed its citizens, to project an image of abundance and prosperity, was a crucial element of the Aztec Empire's power and legitimacy. It was a silent, continuous battle against famine, a war won not with obsidian blades, but with mud, plants, and human ingenuity. Historians still argue whether the precise dietary breakdown of the average Aztec citizen would have been primarily vegetarian, or if smaller animal proteins played a more significant daily role in common households, as opposed to elite diets. And equally debated is the exact percentage of Tenochtitlan's food supply that came directly from these unique island farms versus the vast tribute network from the mainland. How much did the floating gardens truly contribute to the city's daily sustenance? These questions highlight the ongoing efforts to fully understand the intricate food economy of this ancient metropolis. But here's the wonderful part of the story. The Aztecs didn't view the lake as a barrier to agriculture. They saw it as a resource. Instead of fighting against the water, they learned to work with it, transforming a perceived disadvantage into an unparalleled agricultural advantage. They understood that the lake, which seemed to restrict their growth, held the very secrets to their abundance. This brilliant realization would lead to the development of the most fertile, productive, and astonishing agricultural system the world had ever seen. Turning the very water beneath their city into bountiful, edible land, you're ready to see how they made the impossible bloom, aren't you? As you consider the monumental challenge of feeding Tenochtitlan, that burgeoning island metropolis, and the impossible quantities of maize and beans required to keep its hundreds of thousands of inhabitants thriving, your mind naturally seeks a solution. How did they do it? How did they turn a watery disadvantage into an unparalleled agricultural bounty? The answer lies in one of the most brilliant, sustainable, and utterly enchanting agricultural innovations in human history: the Chinampa. These were the floating garden dream, a testament to an ancient people who looked at a vast lake and saw not an obstacle, but fertile, blooming farmland. Imagine, if you will, looking out over the expanse of Lake Texcoco from the towering temples of Tenochtitlan. What you'd see stretching as far as the eye could see was not just open water, but an intricate, shimmering mosaic of long, rectangular plots of land, separated by narrow canals. These were the Chinampas. Despite their common nickname, it's important to understand a subtle but significant point. They didn't actually float in the way a raft or a boat floats. No, that's a common misconception. You probably wouldn't want your entire farm to literally float away with a strong gust of wind. Right. That's just asking for trouble. Instead, Chinampas were artificial islands or raised fields, meticulously constructed from layers of mud, vegetation, and organic matter, anchored firmly to the shallow lakebed. They were, in essence, man-made extensions of land, creating intensely fertile plots that were perpetually irrigated by the surrounding water. It was a genius move. Instead of fighting the lake by draining it, they embraced it, transforming it into the most productive farmland imaginable. The advantages of this system were truly revolutionary. First, and perhaps most obvious, was the permanent water source. These gardens were literally surrounded by water. No need to worry about droughts. No need for complex irrigation channels from distant rivers. The crops always had access to moisture, a farmer's dream in a dry season. It's like having a perpetually self-watering planter, but on a colossal scale. Second, and perhaps even more crucial, was the incredible fertility of the soil. The mud dredged from the bottom of the lake, rich in organic matter from decaying plants and aquatic life, was unbelievably nutrient-dense. Every time the canals were dredged fresh, fertile mud was spread over the Chinampas, constantly replenishing the soil's vitality. This wasn't just dirt, it was super soil, packed with everything a plant could ever wish for. Imagine never having to buy fertilizer again, just scooping it up from your watery backyard. A mainstream historical fact is that Chinampas were indeed highly productive artificial islands, or raised fields constructed in the shallow lake beds of the Valley of Mexico by the Aztecs and earlier Mesoamerican cultures, most notably in and around Tenochtitlan. This system allowed for incredibly intensive agriculture, yielding multiple harvests per year. The constant moisture and rich soil allowed for incredibly high yields and multiple harvests per year. While traditional mainland farming might yield one or two crops annually, Chinampas could produce 3, 4, or even more harvests of maize, beans, squash, chili peppers, and other vegetables. This continuous productivity was the secret to feeding the insatiable appetite of Tenochtitlan. It's like having a perpetual salad bar that just keeps refilling itself. The stability of these seemingly floating gardens was ensured by an ingenious method, the planting of ahuejote willows, a type of cypress tree, along their edges. The extensive root systems of these trees would intertwine, acting like natural rebar, binding the layers of mud and reeds together, preventing erosion and firmly anchoring the Chinampas to the lake bed. Over time, these trees formed living fences, further defining the plots and providing shade and shelter. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, some early European accounts meant when first encountering the Chinampas were so astonished by their appearance that they truly believed these gardens were unmoored, literally drifting around the lake. The idea of entire fields of corn floating by your canoe must have been a truly bewildering sight for the conquistadors, who were used to static. European agricultural fields? It certainly makes for a more exciting visual than just really good dirt. The proximity of these Chinampas to Tenochtitlan was another game changer. Instead of transporting vast amounts of food over long distances, much of the city's fresh produce was grown just a short canoe trip away, reducing logistical burdens and ensuring a constant supply of fresh food to the markets. This immediate access to food was a strategic advantage, a silent testament to the Aztecs' remarkable foresight and engineering prowess. Historians still argue whether the precise origin of Chinampas lies solely with the Aztecs, or if they inherited and perfected the technique from earlier Mesoamerican cultures in the Valley of Mexico, such as the Tlahuica or Xochimilca people. While the Aztecs certainly brought Chinampa agriculture to its peak, the initial innovative spark may have come from those who inhabited the lakes before them. This debate reminds us that even the most ingenious innovations often stand on the shoulders of forgotten predecessors. What's undeniable is that the Chinampa system was the beating heart of Tenochtitlan's agricultural power, allowing it to flourish against seemingly impossible odds. It transformed a vast lake from a barren, watery expanse into a lush, incredibly productive food factory, a verdant marvel of human ingenuity. You're beginning to understand how a dream of floating gardens became the very real foundation of an empire, aren't you? As you let the astonishing concept of the Chinampa, that artificial island dream, settle peacefully in your mind, you might find yourself wondering, how did they actually build these incredible floating gardens? It wasn't some magical wave of a wand. It was a testament to sheer willpower, meticulous planning, and an incredible amount of hands-on labor. Tonight, let's journey into the muddy, laborious reality of building gardens. Mud, reeds, labor. Imagine yourself standing in the shallow, tranquil waters of Lake Texcoco, perhaps up to your knees in soft, silty mud. The air is warm and humid, filled with the scent of water and damp earth. You see teams of ancient Aztec Chinamperos, the dedicated farmers of these floating fields, embarking on a construction project that would put many modern engineers to shame, all without heavy machinery or advanced tools. It was a rhythmic, communal effort, a slow dance with the lake itself. The first step was to define the plot. Imagine them carefully marking out long, rectangular sections in the shallow lake bed, usually around 300 feet long, about a football field, without the end zones and 15-30 feet wide. These precise dimensions weren't arbitrary, they were crucial for optimal sunlight exposure and water circulation. It's like sketching out the perfect garden bed, but your canvas is a lake, and your pencil is a very long stick. Next came the retaining walls. The very skeleton of the Chinampa. You'd see them driving long, sturdy stakes made from willow branches, reeds, and other woody aquatic vegetation into the lake bed along the perimeter of the marked-out plot. These stakes were often interwoven with branches and reeds to form a kind of permeable fence, a living basket, designed to hold the future soil in place. It's like building a giant wicker basket, but for dirt and submerged. Not exactly a weekend DIY project. Once the perimeter was established, the real work began filling the enclosure. This was the ultimate act of recycling, and the source of the Chinampa's incredible fertility. The Chinamperos would use long, sturdy digging sticks, like ancient shovels, to scoop up the rich, dark, organic-laden mud from the bottom of the surrounding canals and the adjacent lake bed. This nutrient-dense silt, accumulated from centuries of decaying aquatic plants and animal waste, was then piled into the rectangular enclosure. But they didn't just dump mud. Oh no, that would be too simple. They built in layers, creating a sort of lasagna of fertility. Alternating layers of this precious lake mud were interspersed with aquatic vegetation, reeds, grasses, and decaying plant matter from the canals. This layering helped with aeration, drainage, and provided a continuous slow-release fertilizer as the organic material decomposed. You can almost feel the squish of the mud, the rustle of the reeds, as each layer was meticulously placed, pressed down, and allowed to settle. A mainstream historical fact is that Chinampas were meticulously constructed by first driving stakes, often willow branches, into the shallow lake bed to create a rectangular perimeter, which was then filled with alternating layers of mud, dredged from canals and decaying aquatic vegetation, with trees planted along the edges for stability. This method allowed for the creation of exceptionally fertile and productive raised fields. Crucially, the canals themselves were an integral part of the system. They weren't just waterways for canoes. They were the source of the building material. Every time a Chinampa was constructed, or an existing one was maintained, the dredging of mud from the surrounding canals deepened them, ensuring continuous water flow and also providing the vital, nutrient-rich soil for the gardens. It was a self-sustaining cycle. Digging canals created land, and that land was fed by the nutrients from those very same canals. Finally, to truly anchor and solidify these newly formed artificial islands, the Ahuejote willows, a type of cypress tree, Taxodium mucronatum, were planted along the edges of the Chinampa. The deep, extensive root systems of these fast-growing trees would intertwine with the layers of mud and reeds, effectively acting as living rebar, binding the entire structure together, preventing erosion, and creating stable, long-lasting plots. You can almost hear the soft rustle of their leaves, a testament to their quiet, steadfast work. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine the occasional miscalculation or overzealous chinampero during construction, leading to a section of Chinampa that was just a bit too soft, or prone to a sudden collapse. You can almost picture an ancient Aztec telling a joke about a particularly unlucky farmer who, after days of back-breaking labor, put his foot down a bit too hard and just vanished into the mud, only to be pulled out by his exasperated comrades, covered head to toe in thick black goo. "Did you forget your mud shoes again?" Tlakaelele. The sheer scale of this engineering feat, carried out over centuries by countless individuals using only the most basic tools, digging sticks, baskets, and canoes, is mind-boggling. It was a testament to the community's collective effort and ingenuity. Each completed Chinampa was not just a farm plot, it was a victory against the limitations of nature, a testament to human perseverance. Historians still argue whether the precise depth of the organic layers within a Chinampa was strictly standardized, or if it varied significantly based on local availability of materials and the specific crops intended for cultivation. And equally debated is the exact methods used for initial compacting of the Chinampa base before planting. Given the challenges of working in a watery, muddy environment, these questions highlight the incredible detail and empirical knowledge held by the ancient Chinamperos. What's certain is that this painstaking, ingenious construction method transformed a vast lake into the most productive agricultural land the world had ever seen, allowing an entire empire to blossom upon the water. As you picture the painstaking, layer-by-layer construction of those fertile Chinampas, that triumph of human labor over the watery landscape, your mind might naturally turn to the spaces between them, those shimmering, dark ribbons of water that separated one garden from the next. These weren't just empty gaps. Oh no. These waterways were the literal canals of life, the very circulatory system that breathed vitality into the entire Chinampa network, making everything else possible. Imagine yourself gliding silently in a flat-bottomed canoe along one of these narrow canals. The air is humid, filled with the scent of damp earth and verdant growth. On either side, the vibrant green of growing crops rises from the water, their roots seemingly drawing sustenance directly from the surrounding channels. These canals served a multitude of critical functions, all working in perfect harmony, a testament to the Aztecs' profound understanding of their unique environment. First, and perhaps most obviously, these canals provided perpetual irrigation. The Chinampa fields, built just a few feet above the water level, constantly drew moisture from the surrounding canals through capillary action. This meant that the crops were continuously watered, regardless of rainfall, eliminating the threat of drought and allowing for year-round cultivation. You didn't need to haul buckets of water or worry about rain dances. The lake itself was your tireless irrigation system. It's like having a garden that waters itself, even when you're busy with, empire building or human sacrifice, though hopefully not at the same time. Second, and equally vital, the canals were the primary means of transportation. This intricate network allowed Chinamperos to easily navigate between their plots, to bring in fresh mud for replenishment, and, crucially, to transport their bountiful harvests back to the bustling markets of Tenochtitlan. Imagine hundreds of canoes, laden with fresh maize, beans, and colorful vegetables, silently gliding through these watery highways, a constant stream of lifeblood flowing into the heart of the city. You might even spot a slightly overloaded canoe, teetering precariously, reminding you that even ancient logistics had their moments of peril. Third, and perhaps most ingeniously, the canals were the continuous source of the Chinampa's incredible fertility. Remember that rich organic mud we talked about, the super soil that made the garden so productive? That mud came directly from the bottom of these canals. The constant dredging, a laborious but essential maintenance task, not only kept the waterways clear for navigation, but also provided an endless supply of nutrient-rich sediment to top-dress the Chinampas. It was a perfectly closed-loop system. The canals provided water and transportation, and in return, they also provided the very soil that made the gardens so fruitful. It's like your compost bin, but it also doubles as a highway. A mainstream historical fact is that the Chinampa system fundamentally relied on this intricate network of canals, serving not only for perpetual irrigation and efficient transportation of goods, but also as the continuous source of nutrient-rich organic mud, perpetually replenishing the fertility of the raised fields. This symbiotic relationship between land and water was central to its sustainability. Beyond agriculture, the canals also played a critical role in water management for the entire city. They helped regulate water levels, particularly during the rainy season, preventing the Chinampas and parts of the city from being completely submerged. And teeming with life, the canals also provided a supplementary source of food fish, frogs, turtles, and aquatic insects that further enriched the Aztec diet. You could, quite literally, fish for dinner from your front yard. The maintenance of these canals was a constant, year-round effort. The silting from dredging and the natural accumulation of aquatic vegetation meant that the channels required continuous cleaning and deepening. You can almost feel the hard work of scooping up the heavy, black mud, loading it into canoes, and then carefully spreading it onto the Chinampa surfaces. This communal labor was essential to keep the entire system functioning efficiently, a testament to the collective responsibility of the Chinampero communities. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine the sheer number of specialized tools or techniques that must have evolved specifically for canal maintenance. Perhaps specific types of long-handled scoops or rakes for dredging, or ingenious methods for moving particularly heavy loads of mud from the canoe to the Chinampa surface. One could even picture a slightly mischievous child trying to navigate a tiny, overloaded toy canoe through the canals, only to have it capsize, spilling its precious cargo of mud back into the water. Oh, young Tezcatlipoca, not again a... Historians still argue whether the precise methods for preventing excessive canal silting without modern tools were entirely effective, or if certain areas of the Chinampa system eventually became less productive over time due to accumulation. And equally debated is the exact hierarchy of water rights within the Chinampa zones, who had priority access to certain channels, and how were disputes over water flow resolved within such a complex, interconnected system. These questions highlight the intricate social and engineering challenges involved in managing such a vast and vital agricultural landscape. What's undeniable is that these waterways were far more than just ditches. They were the very arteries of Tenochtitlan's agricultural heart, pulsing with life, nutrients, and the quiet rhythm of a thriving empire. As you gently glide through the intricate network of canals, having just understood how they served as the very lifeblood of the Chinampa system, providing irrigation and transportation, prepare now to delve into their most profound secret. Because these waterways offered more than just logistical convenience. They held the key to the Chinampa's almost miraculous productivity. We're about to uncover the nutrient richness soil's secret and how the lake itself became the ultimate, tireless fertilizer. Imagine pulling a scoop of dark, viscous mud from the bottom of a Chinampa canal. It might look just like, well, mud. But to an ancient Aztec Chinampero, this wasn't just dirt, it was liquid gold, teeming with life and bursting with potential. This precious lake mud was the primary source of the Chinampa's exceptional fertility. Over centuries, the shallow lake beds accumulated vast deposits of decaying organic matter, fallen leaves from shoreline trees, aquatic plants that had lived and died, algae, and the waste products from fish, frogs, and countless other aquatic creatures. All of this decomposed slowly but surely into a rich, black, incredibly nutrient-dense silt. When the Chinamperos meticulously dredged these canals, a continuous, back-breaking chore, but one vital for navigation, they weren't just clearing pathways. They were harvesting nature's own compost. This freshly dredged mud, brimming with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and a host of other micronutrients, was then carefully spread onto the surface of the Chinampas. This constant replenishment meant that, unlike traditional farmland that often depletes nutrients over time and requires fallow periods or extensive fertilization, the Chinampas were perpetually renewed. It's like having an automatic, self-replenishing fertilizer factory right at your doorstep. The beauty of this system wasn't just in the external application of mud. The very construction of the Chinampas, with their alternating layers of dredged mud and decaying aquatic vegetation, meant that internal decomposition was also continuously releasing nutrients directly into the root zones of the growing plants. The Chinampa itself was a living, breathing compost pile, perpetually feeding the crops from within. You can almost feel the gentle hum of microbial activity, the quiet alchemy of decomposition turning waste into vibrant new life. A mainstream historical fact here is that the exceptional and sustained fertility of Chinampas was largely due to the continuous application of nutrient-rich organic mud. routinely dredged from the surrounding canals and spread onto the raised fields. This practice created a highly sustainable and productive agricultural system, significantly reducing the need for other forms of fertilization. Contrast this with the endless struggle of traditional agriculture in many parts of the world, where farmers battled soil exhaustion, rotating crops or leaving fields fallow for years to recover. The Aztecs, with their Chinampas, essentially bypassed this problem entirely. See, their soil was a dynamic, living medium, perpetually recharged by the lake's natural processes. This allowed for the incredibly intensive, continuous cultivation that was necessary to feed the massive population of Tenochtitlan. It's a bit like discovering a cheat code for farming, but the cheat code involves a lot of mud and a good digging stick. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine the specific types of microscopic organisms and beneficial bacteria that must have thrived in that rich lake mud, acting as unseen collaborators in the Chinampas' fertility. Perhaps certain aquatic plants, like particular types of water hyacinths or duckweed, were deliberately cultivated or allowed to grow in the canals not just for their own nutritional value, but because Chinamperos instinctively understood that their decomposition greatly enhanced the mud's fertilizing power. They were ancient ecologists, observing and harnessing nature's cycles with uncanny precision, even if they didn't have the scientific terms for it. That floating green stuff? Oh, that's just future corn, my friend. The result of this incredible fertility was robust, healthy plants and astonishingly high yields. Crops grew faster, stronger, and more abundantly than in traditional dryland farming. This constant supply of fresh, nutrient-rich food wasn't just an agricultural success, it was a societal triumph, bolstering the empire's economy, supporting its massive urban center, and ensuring its stability. The subtle secret of the Chinampas, its endless bounty, was truly the lifeblood of the Aztec world. Historians still argue whether the precise long-term impact of potential heavy metal accumulation in lake sediments, especially in a system reliant on continuous dredging, might have posed health risks over generations for the Aztec population, or if natural processes effectively mitigated such concerns. And equally debated is the exact microbial biodiversity at play in the mud and its full contribution to nutrient cycling. Given the limitations of ancient observation, these fascinating questions underscore the complexity of such ancient ecological systems. What's undeniable is that the Aztecs tapped into a fundamental, powerful secret of nature, transforming a seemingly inhospitable lake into an engine of endless abundance, all thanks to the humble, yet miraculous, richness of its mud. As you appreciate the quiet miracle of the Chinampas' nutrient richness, that constantly replenished, hyper-fertile mud from the lake bed, your mind naturally turns to the incredible output this system enabled. Because this wasn't just good dirt, it was the engine of an empire, providing continuous harvests. A veritable Aztec bounty that flowed year-round into the bustling markets of Tenochtitlan. Imagine a garden that never sleeps, a farm that never stops giving. That's precisely what the Chinampas were. Unlike traditional seasonal farming, where you plant, harvest, and then leave the land fallow for months, the Chinampas, with their constant moisture, rich soil, and the Valley of Mexico's favorable climate, allowed for almost perpetual cultivation. You could be planting new seedlings in one part of a Chinampa while harvesting mature crops in another, ensuring a steady, unbroken flow of fresh produce. It was like having a magical refrigerator that always restocked itself. But instead of processed foods, it was always fresh, organic, and incredibly healthy. The sheer diversity of crops grown on these floating gardens was astonishing. Of course, the staples were paramount vast quantities of maize corn, beans, and squash. The three sisters of Mesoamerican agriculture formed the backbone of the Aztec diet. But beyond these, the Chinampas produced an incredible array of vegetables, vibrant chili peppers, juicy tomatoes, various types of amaranth, a highly nutritious grain leafy green, sweet potatoes, edible flowers, and a plethora of leafy greens. You might even find specialized plots dedicated to medicinal plants, used by Aztec healers, or beautiful flowers destined for temple ceremonies and elaborate decorations. It was basically a supersized, ancient organic farm, long before organic was a hashtag. What truly set this continuous productivity apart were the intensive farming techniques employed by the Chinamperos. One of the most ingenious was the use of seed beds, known as almacigos. Imagine small, highly fertile, often elevated beds of mud, perhaps no bigger than your hand, where seeds were sown extremely densely. Once the seedlings emerged, tiny and tender, they were carefully separated and transplanted to the larger Chinampa plots. This method maximized space, ensured high germination rates, protected vulnerable young plants, and allowed for precise timing of planting, guaranteeing that as soon as one crop was harvested, another was ready to take its place. It's like having a little plant nursery, but instead of cute little pots, it's just very, very fertile mud. This succession planting meant that as one crop matured and was removed, another was immediately set in its place, making the most efficient use of every square inch of the Chinampa. You'd see farmers constantly engaged in this delicate dance of planting, tending, and harvesting, often growing multiple compatible crops together in a system known as intercropping, which optimized space and nutrient use. It was a sophisticated agricultural ballet, performed daily by thousands of skilled hands. A mainstream historical fact is that Chinampas allowed for exceptionally intensive, continuous agriculture, yielding multiple harvests, often 3 to 4, and sometimes up to 7 per year of diverse crops, a productivity far exceeding that of traditional rain-fed dryland farming. This high output was crucial for sustaining the dense urban population of Tenochtitlan and minimizing reliance on distant tribute. Compared to contemporary European farming, which often relied on extensive fallow periods to allow soil to recover, the Chinampa system was a marvel of sustained activity. There were no fallow periods here. The self-fertilizing nature of the mud and the constant moisture negated the need for it. This meant a constant supply of fresh food, contributing immensely to the health and stability of the Aztec population. You can almost smell the vibrant freshness of chili peppers, the earthy sweetness of corn, and the verdant scent of leafy greens, all grown just a short canoe ride from the city's heart. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine the sheer variety of insects and small aquatic animals that were also harvested from the Chinampas and canals. Not just as pests, but as supplementary food sources. Grasshoppers, ants, and various types of aquatic larvae were considered delicacies, providing additional protein. You can almost picture an ancient Aztec telling a joke about a particularly plump grasshopper that tried to escape its fate by pretending to be a tiny, crunchy avocado. "Oh, little chap, you almost had me, but the crunch gave you away." These less glamorous, but equally vital, parts of the Chinampa ecosystem provided a quiet contribution to the overall food security. Historians still argue whether the exact percentage of the Chinampa area was dedicated to specific staple crops versus more specialized vegetables, flowers, or medicinal plants, reflecting a complex agricultural economy. And equally debated is the precise extent to which protein-rich insects or aquatic animals from the canals significantly contributed to the overall caloric intake of the general population, or if they were primarily considered supplementary or seasonal foods. These questions highlight the intricate web of Aztec diet and agriculture. What's undeniable is that the Chinampas were a testament to their profound understanding of polyculture and ecological balance, providing an astonishing bounty that defied the very notion of limited land, feeding an empire with a gentle, continuous flow of life. As the vibrant image of continuous harvests and the astonishing Aztec bounties of the Chinampas settles in your mind, you might wonder about the hands that made such abundance possible. Who were these people? And what was their daily rhythm like, tending to a farm that never seemed to rest tonight? Let's step into the quiet, rhythmic world of the Chinamperos' day, gentle cultivators of the floating gardens. Imagine waking up with the first hint of pre-dawn light filtering through the misty air of the lake. Your home, a simple dwelling of adobe and thatch, stands on a chinampa or a nearby causeway, surrounded by the gentle lapping of water. You might hear the distant cries of aquatic birds, or the soft dip of a paddle as an early riser begins their commute. Life here was dictated by the sun, the water, and the relentless fertility of the earth. After a simple breakfast of tortillas and beans, perhaps accompanied by a chili sauce, you would head out in your canoe. This wasn't just a means of transport, it was your mobile workspace, your link to the network of canals and your individual plots. You'd glide silently, the morning mist still clinging to the surface of the water, until you reached your assigned sections of Chinampa, ready to begin the tireless work of cultivation. The day of a Chinampero, the Nahuatl term for a Chinampa farmer, was a constant cycle of planting, tending, and harvesting. Because of the Chinampa's continuous productivity, there was always something to do. You might spend the early morning hours carefully transplanting seedlings from the dense almasagos, those nursery beds we talked about, into the main Chinampa plots. Using a specialized digging stick called a koa, pronounced Koh-ha, a long, sturdy tool with a flattened or spade-like end, you'd make precise holes in the soft, rich mud and gently place the delicate young plants, ensuring their roots found immediate purchase in the moist, nutrient-rich soil. It was a precise, almost surgical task, repeated thousands of times. Then would come the essential work of dredging and fertilizing. You'd climb into your canoe, armed with your koa or a wide basket, and scoop up the rich black mud from the bottom of the surrounding canals. This heavy, mucky sediment, teeming with organic matter, would then be carefully spread over the Chinampa surfaces, acting as a natural, constant replenishment of nutrients. You can almost feel the satisfying squelch of the mud, the earthy aroma rising from the freshly turned soil. It's like having to constantly spread compost. But your compost bin is also a pond, and you have to dig it out with a stick. Not glamorous, but incredibly effective. Weeding was also a perpetual task, but one made easier by the consistent moisture, which kept the soil softer than dry land fields. You'd often remove weeds manually, or use your koa to gently turn the soil, keeping the plots tidy and free from competition. Pest control was largely natural. Birds and other beneficial animals were encouraged, and careful observation kept potential threats in check without any harsh chemicals. And of course, there was harvesting. Given the continuous nature of the Chinampas, there was always something ripe and ready. You might be picking chili peppers in one section, while your neighbor was harvesting ears of maize nearby. The bounty was constant, flowing into your canoe, ready to be paddled to the bustling markets of Tenochtitlan. It's like living in a perpetual autumn, but without the annoying raking of leaves. A mainstream historical fact is that the Chinamperos engaged in a highly intensive, continuous cycle of planting, tending, and harvesting, utilizing specialized tools like the koa for transplanting and constantly fertilizing their fields with nutrient-rich canal mud. This constant care enabled multiple harvests per year and the extraordinary productivity of the Chinampa system. The work was physically demanding, requiring strength and endurance, but it was arguably more gentle than dry land farming. You weren't breaking hard, compacted earth with heavy plows. You were working with soft mud, water, and lightweight tools. It was a rhythmic labor, often a family effort, with men, women, and even children participating in different tasks, contributing to the communal well-being. It fostered a deep, intimate connection with the land and the water, a profound understanding of ecological balance. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine the small, almost ritualistic details of a Chinampero's day. Perhaps they'd wear special, simple sandals to protect their feet from the mud, or carry a specific type of woven basket for collecting seedlings. One can almost picture a seasoned Chinampero offering a small prayer to Tlaloc, the Aztec rain god, or Chalchiotlicu, the goddess of lakes and springs, before starting a new day of digging. It's like saying good morning to your plants, but with slightly higher stakes and more elaborate deities. Historians still argue whether the precise division of labor on the Chinampas was strictly gender-based, with men primarily doing the heavy digging and women tending to the seedlings and harvesting, or if roles were more fluid, depending on the family's needs and available hands. And equally debated is the extent to which Chinamperos were truly independent free farmers, owning their plots, versus subjects owing labor tribute to the Aztec state for the privilege of farming these highly productive lands. These questions highlight the complex socio-economic structure underpinning this agricultural marvel. What's undeniable is that the diligent work of the Chinamperos, day in and day out, was the quiet engine that powered the magnificent Aztec Empire, turning mud and water into life itself. As you envision the diligent, rhythmic work of the Chinamperos, those gentle cultivators of the floating fields, ceaselessly planting and harvesting, you begin to grasp something truly profound about the Chinampa system. It wasn't just productive, it was a masterpiece of sustainable design, an agricultural marvel that operated in remarkable harmony with its environment. Tonight, we're diving into the heart of its ecological harmony, ancient sustainability, exploring the remarkable balance and environmental wisdom that allowed these gardens to flourish for centuries. Imagine the air around you, clean and fresh, smelling of rich earth and cool water. You see no signs of chemical runoff, no vast, sterile monocultures stretching to the horizon. Instead, you're surrounded by a vibrant, buzzing ecosystem. The Chinampa system was, in essence, a perfectly engineered, self-sustaining agricultural machine, driven by nature's own cycles. Long before anyone even conceived of terms like carbon footprint or renewable resources, at its core was a brilliant principle: nutrient cycling. We've talked about how the lake mud was incredibly fertile, but it wasn't just a one-time gift. The continuous dredging of mud from the canals and its application to the Chinampas created a closed-loop system. As crops grew and were harvested, they drew nutrients from the soil. But instead of depleting the soil, the regular addition of fresh, nutrient-rich mud from the canals, filled with decaying organic matter from the lake, continuously replenished it. It was like having a perpetually composting system that also delivered its bounty directly to your crops. No need for artificial fertilizers. No need for distant manure. The lake provided everything. It's like discovering your backyard pond actually produces gourmet organic food for free, and you just need to scoop it out. Then there was the intricate water management. The canals, as we know, irrigated the Chinampas through capillary action. But they did more than that. They acted as a sophisticated natural filtration system, helping to regulate water levels within the lake basin, especially during heavy rainy seasons, preventing widespread flooding of both the agricultural plots and the city itself. They also helped to cleanse the water, allowing sediment to settle and supporting aquatic plant life that further purified the system. It was farming with the water, not against it, a testament to true hydroengineering. This system also fostered an astounding level of biodiversity. The network of Chinampas and canals created a unique habitat that supported a rich tapestry of life. You'd see various species of fish, frogs, turtles, and aquatic birds thriving in the canals, many of which contributed to the diet of the Chinamperos. Beneficial insects would pollinate the crops and keep pests in check. The ahueyote willow trees lining the Chinampa edges not only stabilized the soil but also provided shade, shelter, and a source of wood for tools and fuel. It was a holistic farm, where every element contributed to the health and productivity of the whole. A mainstream historical fact is that the Chinampa system was a highly sustainable and ecologically sound agricultural method, characterized by efficient closed-loop nutrient cycling, natural irrigation, and integrated water management, all of which supported high biodiversity and long-term productivity without significant external inputs. This inherent sustainability meant that the Chinampas could be, and were, cultivated continuously for centuries without suffering from soil depletion or requiring extensive fallow periods. They were a living example of regenerative agriculture, a model that contrasts sharply with many modern farming practices that rely heavily on chemical inputs and often lead to soil degradation. The Aztecs didn't have the scientific terms for it, but they certainly practiced it with remarkable success. You can almost feel the vitality of the ecosystem, the quiet hum of life in perfect balance. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine the role of particular types of aquatic insects or small crustaceans that lived in the Chinampa canals. These tiny creatures, often overlooked, would have played a crucial role in breaking down organic matter, contributing to the nutrient cycle, and even serving as a subtle, continuous food source for fish and birds, further integrating the food web. One could even picture an ancient Chinampero having a very specific, perhaps humorous relationship with the local frog population, relying on their croaks to signal certain weather patterns or the health of the waterways. Old Froggy says it's going to be a good harvest. Bless his little amphibian heart. Historians still argue whether the precise impact of varying lake salinity levels over time on Chinampa productivity was fully understood or consistently managed by the Aztecs, or if certain areas of the Chinampa system were eventually abandoned due to increased salt concentration. And equally debated is the exact role of specific aquatic organisms in the nitrogen cycle within the Chinampas, and how this intricate microbial activity contributed to the unique fertility of the mud. These complex questions remind us of the incredible, unseen forces at play in such a sophisticated natural system. What's undeniable is that the Chinampa system was a testament to ancient ecological wisdom, a remarkable example of how humans could not only live within their environment, but actively enhance its productivity and health for generations. As you let the profound wisdom of the Chinampas' ecological harmony and ancient sustainability settle peacefully in your thoughts, allowing you to appreciate their ingenious, closed-loop systems. Let's now bring our gaze back to the very heart of the Aztec world. Because these verdant, productive islands weren't just external agricultural zones, they were woven directly into the fabric of Tenochtitlan itself, forming the very green lungs and food source of the capital. Imagine, if you will, floating in a canoe through the outer rings of Tenochtitlan. What you'd see stretching before you would be breathtaking. Beyond the towering temples and bustling causeways, the city didn't just end in harsh, dry land. Instead, it seamlessly transitioned into a vibrant, shimmering mosaic of thousands upon thousands of these rectangular chinampas, each one a riot of green and color. This wasn't just a city with a garden, it was a city made of gardens, a truly unique blend of urban planning and agricultural genius. The visual impact alone must have been astounding. While contemporary European cities were often crowded, gray, and unsanitary, Tenochtitlan would have appeared as a verdant paradise. Lush fields of maize, beans, and chili peppers would have been visible from almost anywhere, interspersed with shimmering canals where canoes silently ferried produce. It was a sight that captivated the Spanish conquistadors, who, despite their later destructive actions, recorded their awe at this emerald city. Imagine a city with more green space than concrete, where your daily commute was a gentle paddle past fields of ripening corn. It's enough to make you wish you had an ancient Aztec urban planner on speed dial. Beyond the aesthetics, the functional integration of Chinampas into Tenochtitlan's urban environment was absolutely critical. The most obvious, of course, was the direct food supply. The Chinampas literally encircled the city, acting as its immediate pantry. This proximity meant fresh produce could be harvested in the morning and be on market stalls within hours, without the need for long, arduous overland transport that plagued other large cities of the era. The vast Tlatelolco market, one of the largest in the world, would have been constantly replenished with the freshest Chinampa produce, feeding the hungry millions of the empire. You can almost smell the crispness of fresh greens, the earthy aroma of newly dug root vegetables, mingling with the bustling sounds of the market. Furthermore, these vast expanses of green were undoubtedly the city's lungs. All those growing plants, absorbing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen, would have contributed to remarkably cleaner air and cooler temperatures within the urban environment, especially compared to dense, stone-built cities elsewhere. They acted as natural air purifiers and climate regulators, turning a potentially stifling island city into a vibrant, breathable metropolis. It's like having a sprawling, highly efficient outdoor air conditioner that also makes you delicious food. What's not to love? A mainstream historical fact is that the Chinampa system formed a significant, integrated part of Tenochtitlan's urban and peri-urban landscape. providing a direct and continuous supply of fresh food to the city's vast population and contributing to its unique aesthetic and environmental quality. This integration allowed Tenochtitlan to become one of the largest and most densely populated cities of its time. The network of canals that crisscrossed the Chinampas also shaped the very layout and function of Tenochtitlan. These weren't just agricultural channels. They were extensions of the city's streets, allowing for easy movement by canoe for both agricultural and recreational purposes. Imagine grand ceremonial processions gliding down canals lined with vibrant fields, or simply families enjoying a quiet paddle on a calm evening. It made the city a living, breathing entity, deeply connected to its watery environment. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine the specific challenges of urban farming in such a unique setting. Perhaps there were specific Chinampa codes or unwritten rules about not letting your chili plants lean too far over into your neighbor's canal, or about maintaining clear pathways for passing canoes, lest a minor agricultural encroachment lead to a very polite but firm dispute at the local Kalpuli neighborhood council meeting. Your squash vine, neighbor, is showing an undue territorial ambition into my tomato patch. In many ways, the Aztecs were pioneers of urban agriculture and green infrastructure. Long before these concepts became buzzwords in modern city planning, their chinampas were the ultimate sustainable solution, blending high-density food production with environmental benefits and aesthetic beauty. Historians still argue whether the Chinampas, immediately adjacent to the central city, were primarily privately owned and managed by individual families, or if a significant portion of them were communally managed or directly controlled by the Aztec state to ensure food security for the elite and the general populace. And equally debated is the precise planning behind their integration into the urban layout. Was it an organic growth? Or was there a master plan for the expansion of these agricultural zones as the city grew? These questions highlight the intricate socio-economic and planning aspects of this incredible urban experiment. What's undeniable is that Tenochtitlan was a city that defied the conventional, a sprawling testament to human ingenuity, where the very act of growing food was part of the city's pulse, its green heart beating strong amidst the shimmering waters. As you let the magnificent image of Tenochtitlan's green heart, that vibrant, self-sustaining city interwoven with blooming chinampas, settle gently in your mind, a shadow begins to fall across the shimmering lake. For this idyllic picture of ancient ingenuity was about to meet a force utterly alien to its delicate balance, the Spanish arrival. A seismic event that would shake the waters of the Valley of Mexico and forever alter the fate of the floating gardens. Imagine the year 1519. You're standing on one of the causeways leading into Tenochtitlan, watching in awe as a group of strange, pale-skinned men, clad in gleaming metal armor and riding impossibly large beasts, march towards the city. These are the conquistadors, led by Hernán Cortés. Their initial reaction to Tenochtitlan was one of stunned admiration. They described it as a city of dreams, a floating wonder, unlike anything they had ever seen. They marveled at its causeways, its temples, and yes, its endless verdant chinampas teeming with food. For a brief moment, you can almost hear the awe in their voices, a rare moment of respect before the inevitable. But this awe was quickly overshadowed by greed and a profound misunderstanding of the indigenous world. The Spanish came for gold and glory, not for corn and sustainable agriculture. Their arrival, culminating in the brutal siege of Tenochtitlan in 1521, brought immediate and catastrophic disruption to the Chinampa system. Imagine the horror the very canals that had been the city's lifeblood became pathways for Spanish brigantines, instruments of war rather than trade. The causeways, once vital connections, were deliberately cut to isolate the city. The carefully maintained Chinampas themselves, the source of sustenance, were trampled, burned, and destroyed during the fighting, as the invading forces sought to starve the city into submission. The war wasn't just fought with swords and arrows, it was fought with famine. The highly efficient, but also highly specialized, Chinampa system was incredibly vulnerable to such direct assault. The continuous harvests stopped. The meticulous care of the Chinamperos was abandoned, and the delicate balance of the ecosystem began to unravel. You can almost feel the shock of the lake, no longer reflecting peaceful gardens, but the smoke of burning homes and the screams of battle. It's like someone suddenly decided to turn your meticulously organized garden into a war zone, and then wondered why nothing was growing. Beyond the immediate devastation of warfare, the introduction of European diseases played an equally, if not more, destructive role. Smallpox, measles, and other illnesses, completely alien to the indigenous immune systems, swept through the population with terrifying speed. The Chinamperos, the very hands and minds that understood and maintained this complex system, died in staggering numbers. Without the continuous, intensive labor required for dredging, planting, and tending, the Chinampas began to silt up, to erode, and to slowly return to swamp. You can almost hear the heartbreaking silence of abandoned plots, where once bustling activity had reigned. A mainstream historical fact is that the Spanish conquest of Tenochtitlan, 1521 CE, led to immediate and significant disruption and decline of the Chinampa system, primarily due to the destruction of infrastructure during the siege. The devastating impact of European diseases on the indigenous labor force, and a fundamental misunderstanding of indigenous agricultural practices by the new colonial administration. The Spanish, despite their initial admiration, largely failed to grasp the intricate ecological wisdom of the Chinampa system. They were accustomed to European dryland farming, to vast tracts of land worked by plows and large domesticated animals. The idea of farming on water, of constantly recycling mud, was alien to them. They saw the lake as something to be drained, to be tamed, rather than a resource to be worked with. This cultural disconnect meant that colonial policies often inadvertently, or even actively, undermined the Chinampas. They introduced European farm animals like cattle and sheep, which trampled and damaged the delicate Chinampa plots and their retaining trees. It's like trying to get a bull to do ballet. It's just not going to work, and someone's going to get hurt. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine a Spanish colonial administrator, fresh from Europe, trying to understand the Chinampa system. He might have been utterly bewildered by the notion of farming with mud, and perhaps even tried to apply traditional European land ownership laws to plots that were literally created from water. You can almost picture him scratching his head, trying to figure out how to tax a floating garden, or how to explain to his superiors why the best agricultural land was, in fact, a swamp. But where are the fences, senor? And why does the dirt keep moving? The immediate aftermath of the conquest saw a precipitous decline in Chinampa maintenance and productivity. The new Spanish colonial capital, built directly on the ruins of Tenochtitlan, was focused on draining the lake to prevent flooding and to create more conventional dry land for European-style agriculture and urban expansion. The emphasis shifted from intensive, water-based food production to tribute in silver and resources extracted from wider territories. Historians still argue whether the primary cause of Chinampa decline immediately after the conquest was predominantly the direct impact of warfare, the overwhelming demographic collapse due to disease, or the fundamental policy changes and cultural misunderstanding of the Spanish administration. Was it a single, devastating blow, or a gradual, systemic dismantling? The answer is likely a tragic combination of all these factors, each feeding into the others, leading to a rapid and profound transformation of the Valley of Mexico's agricultural landscape. What's undeniable is that the arrival of the Spanish marked a brutal end to an ancient era, and the resilient Chinampas faced their greatest challenge yet, their gentle harvests shaken to their very core. As you reflect on the seismic shock of the Spanish arrival and the immediate brutal disruption it brought to the delicate balance of the Chinampa system, prepare now for the longer, more insidious struggle that unfolded over centuries. For while the initial invasion was a devastating blow, the colonial era brought sustained pressures that forced the Chinampas to either adapt or fade, a testament to their resilience or their ultimate vulnerability under new rule. Imagine the Valley of Mexico, no longer solely under Aztec dominion, but now subject to the policies of the Spanish crown and its new colonial administration. The new capital, Mexico City, built literally atop the ruins of Tenochtitlan, was prone to devastating floods, a problem the Aztecs had managed with ingenious dikes. The Spanish solution to drain Lake Texcoco, a colossal undertaking that continued for centuries. You can almost feel the water receding, slowly but relentlessly, changing the very landscape. This wasn't just about controlling floods, it was about creating dry land for European-style agriculture and urban expansion. This massive drainage directly undermined the Chinampas, cutting off their essential water supply and disrupting the intricate hydrological balance that sustained them. It's like draining the battery from your phone and then wondering why it stopped working. Furthermore, the changes in indigenous labor systems were profoundly disruptive. The sophisticated communal labor of the Chinamperos, carefully organized within their Calpali neighborhood groups, was replaced by the encomienda and later repartimiento systems. Indigenous people were often forced into labor for Spanish mines, haciendas, or public works, drawing them away from their traditional agricultural practices. Imagine a community that had perfected the art of cultivating floating gardens for generations, suddenly being told they had to go dig for silver instead. The careful, continuous maintenance that Chinampas required simply couldn't be sustained. The imposition of European concepts of private land ownership and water rights further complicated matters. The communal, integrated nature of the Chinampa system, where water was a shared resource and land was continuously being made from it, didn't fit neatly into the Spanish legal framework of fixed, titled properties. This led to disputes over water access, land ownership, and often the marginalization of indigenous Chinamperos. You can almost hear the bewildered arguments at colonial courts, trying to explain to a Spanish judge how your field literally grows out of the water and requires shared access to canals. A mainstream historical fact is that during the Spanish colonial era, the Chinampa system underwent significant decline due to a combination of factors, including the large-scale drainage projects of Lake Texcoco, the disruption of indigenous labor systems, the imposition of European land tenure and water laws, and the introduction of new crops and livestock incompatible with the Chinampa environment. The introduction of new European crops and animals also played a role. While some Chinampas were adapted to grow wheat or barley for the Spanish diet, these crops often required different cultivation techniques or were less suited to the Chinampas' unique fertility cycle. More destructively, the introduction of large grazing animals like cattle and sheep, completely alien to the pre-Hispanic ecosystem, trampled the delicate Chinampa plots, damaged their retaining willow trees, and muddied the canals. It's like trying to run a pottery workshop with a herd of elephants. Things are just not going to go well. The colonial administration also favored large-scale haciendas on drained dry land for agricultural production, especially for staples like wheat, reducing the strategic importance and investment in Chinampa farming. The focus shifted away from the intensive, highly productive system of the Chinampas towards more extensive land-based agriculture. Despite these immense challenges, the Chinampas didn't disappear entirely, as they demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability, particularly in the southern, less drained parts of the lake system, like Xochimilco. Here, communities continued the Chinampa tradition, often adapting to grow crops for the new colonial markets or focusing on specific high-value produce. They survived in areas that were less desirable for direct Spanish settlement or large-scale haciendas, a testament to the deep-rooted knowledge and stubborn perseverance of the Chinamperos. You can almost hear the quiet defiance in the continued cultivation, a whispered refusal to let the ancient ways die. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine the attempts by some colonial authorities to modernize Chinampas by forcing the adoption of European plows or draft animals. You can almost picture the comical scene of a bewildered oxen sinking into the soft Chinampa mud, or a European plow getting hopelessly stuck in the layers of reeds and muck. Much to the quiet amusement of the local Chinamperos, who knew their digging sticks were far superior for this unique terrain. Yes, senor. Your large beasts are most efficient at sinking. Historians still argue whether the exact percentage of Chinampa area lost during the colonial period was a near total collapse or a more gradual attrition, primarily concentrating in the southern zones. And equally debated is the extent to which indigenous knowledge of Chinampa construction and maintenance was actively suppressed by the Spanish, versus simply neglected as the colonial economy shifted priorities. Was it deliberate cultural eradication, or the consequence of differing economic systems and demographic changes? The nuances are debated, but the profound shift in the agricultural landscape of the Valley of Mexico is undeniable, leaving the ancient floating gardens struggling for survival in a changed world. As you consider the immense pressures the colonial era placed upon the Chinampas, forcing them to either adapt or fade into memory, let's now skip forward through the centuries. We're drifting into the present day, to a quiet, almost anachronistic corner of a sprawling megalopolis. For against all odds, the ancient floating gardens did not entirely vanish. They survived, vibrant and defiant, forming the modern legacy Xochimilco's survival. Imagine yourself now on the southern edge of modern-day Mexico City, one of the largest and most densely populated urban centers on Earth. Suddenly, the concrete jungle gives way to a shimmering labyrinth of narrow canals and verdant, rectangular islands, seemingly plucked from another time. This is Xochimilco, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the last remaining active testament to the incredible pre-Hispanic Chinampa system. You can almost hear the distant hum of the city, a stark contrast to the gentle lapping of water against boat hulls and the rustle of cornstalks. It's like stepping into a time machine, only instead of a phone booth, it's a very brightly painted boat. Life here continues in much the same way it did centuries ago. The traditional methods of Chinampro farming persist, passed down through generations. You'd see farmers, much like their Aztec ancestors, diligently tending their plots, scooping the rich mud from the canals, planting seedlings from almacigos, and harvesting fresh produce that still makes its way to Mexico City's markets. While perhaps no longer feeding an entire empire, these Chinampas remain a significant source of fresh, often organic, produce for local communities and specialty restaurants, providing a vital green lung for the city. Xochimilco, however, is not just a working farm, it's also a vibrant cultural and tourist destination. You'd witness colorful trajineras, flat-bottomed boats adorned with bright flowers and often bearing whimsical names gliding through the canals, filled with families and tourists, enjoying mariachi music and street food. It's a floating fiesta, a lively celebration of Mexican heritage. You might even find yourself trying to politely decline a singing mariachi band that is paddled up right next to your boat, realizing that even ancient waterways now have their own unique form of traffic jams. A mainstream historical fact is that the Chinampas of Xochimilco are the last remaining active remnants of the extensive pre-Hispanic Chinampa system of the Valley of Mexico, and they were recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987 for their unique cultural and ecological significance. This designation aims to protect both the ancient agricultural method and the unique ecosystem it supports. Despite its beauty and UNESCO status, Xochimilco faces immense modern challenges. The relentless urban encroachment from Mexico City's expansion is a constant threat. Illegal settlements, pollution from urban runoff, and the sheer pressure of a growing metropolis are eating away at the edges of the wetland, disrupting the delicate ecosystem. You can almost feel the weight of modern development pressing in on this ancient marvel. Perhaps the most critical challenge is water quality and availability. The rapid growth of Mexico City has led to the overexploitation of aquifers, lowering water levels in the canals. What water remains is often polluted by sewage and agricultural residue, threatening the health of the ecosystem and the viability of farming. The loss of traditional knowledge is also a concern, as younger generations of Chinamperos are often drawn away from the demanding life of farming to seek work in the city. It's a sad thought that thousands of years of accumulated wisdom could slowly be forgotten. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, Xochimilco is famously the last natural habitat of the critically endangered axolotl, a unique species of salamander that never fully develops. Retaining its larval form and gills, these charming, perpetually smiling amphibians are a symbol of Xochimilco's unique biodiversity, and their fate is inextricably linked to the health of the Chinampa canals. Conservation efforts now often involve building specialized Chinampa refugios, small, protected Chinampa-like habitats within the canals, to help these amazing creatures survive. It's like a tiny, secret aquatic spa for endangered amphibians, all thanks to the ongoing efforts of dedicated biologists and chinamperos. Historians still argue whether the long-term viability of Xochimilco's chinampas is truly sustainable given the ongoing urban pressures and environmental degradation, or if their ultimate survival depends on massive, perhaps unrealistic external interventions. And equally debated are the best conservation strategies for preserving both the unique ecosystem and the traditional farming practices. Should the focus be on tourism, agroecology, or pure scientific preservation? These questions highlight the complex balancing act required to protect this living piece of history. What's undeniable is that Xochimilco stands as a powerful reminder of an ancient agricultural miracle, a testament to human ingenuity and the enduring connection between people and the land, even as it struggles to survive in a rapidly changing world. Its quiet promise for future food security, however, continues to whisper across the waters. As you consider the vibrant yet fragile survival of Xochimilco's Chinampas in the modern world, still bravely growing food amidst a sprawling metropolis, your mind naturally turns from history to its enduring implications. What can this ancient, ingenious system teach us today? For the Chinampas are not just a relic of the past, they hold profound global lessons, ancient agricultural wisdom that speaks directly to some of the most pressing challenges of our modern world. Imagine our planet today a rapidly growing population, diminishing arable land, increasing water scarcity, and the urgent need for sustainable food production in the face of climate change. Many modern agricultural practices, while productive, come at a high environmental cost, depleting soil, guzzling water, and relying heavily on chemical inputs. But when you look back at the Chinampas, you see a blueprint for a different path, a vision of farming that could inspire us. The most powerful lesson from the Chinampas is their inherent sustainability and regenerative power. Remember their closed-loop nutrient cycle, the constant dredging of nutrient-rich mud from the canals and its application to the fields meant that the soil was perpetually replenished. There was virtually no waste, no need for external chemical fertilizers, and no soil depletion. This ancient practice offers a compelling model for regenerative agriculture, focusing on rebuilding soil health rather than simply extracting from it. It's like finding out your ancient ancestor had a super efficient, self-cleaning, never-ending garden, and you've been doing it wrong all along. Then there's the astonishing intensive productivity. Chinampas demonstrated how to achieve exceptionally high yields from relatively small areas, producing multiple harvests per year, in a world facing dwindling land resources and expanding urban populations. This model offers invaluable insights into urban farming and maximizing food production in confined spaces. Imagine rooftop gardens, vertical farms, or even repurposed urban wetlands adopting these principles to feed cities directly, rather than relying on long-distance transportation. You can almost taste the freshness of locally grown food, harvested just miles from your plate. The Chinampas also offer crucial lessons in integrated water management. Their intricate network of canals not only irrigated the crops, but also played a role in filtering water, managing floodwaters, and supporting aquatic ecosystems. This holistic approach is far more sophisticated than simply damming rivers or pumping groundwater. It teaches us to work with natural water cycles, creating systems that are resilient to both drought and flood, and that simultaneously purify water. It's like having a natural water filter and food factory all rolled into one. A mainstream historical fact is that the Chinampa system offers a compelling historical model for sustainable, highly productive agriculture, providing invaluable insights into regenerative farming, urban food security, and integrated water management for contemporary challenges. Its principles are studied by agronomists and environmental scientists today. Furthermore, the Chinampas fostered remarkable biodiversity. The intermingling of land and water created diverse habitats for plants, fish, birds, and insects, many of which contributed to the overall health and productivity of the system. This stands in stark contrast to modern monoculture, which often reduces biodiversity and creates environments vulnerable to pests and diseases. The Chinampas show us that agriculture can support rather than destroy ecological richness. It's like realizing your farm can also be a wildlife sanctuary and everyone benefits. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine a modern urban planner or agricultural scientist, after studying ancient Chinampas, trying to convince city officials to implement a similar mud-based system in a contemporary urban park. You can almost picture the blank stares, the polite questions about sanitation and smell, and the inevitable joke about needing a lot more wellies. It highlights the cultural gap between ancient ingenuity and modern sensibilities, even when the ancient solution is clearly superior ecologically. So, you want us to start dredging parks for fertilizer? Are you sure you're feeling well? Dr. Jones. Of course, we can't simply replicate the Chinampa system everywhere. It requires specific environmental conditions, shallow lakes, abundant mud, and a warm climate. But the principles behind Chinampas are universal, working with natural cycles, maximizing efficiency in space and resources, fostering biodiversity, and building systems that are inherently regenerative. They offer a powerful inspiration for developing new, localized, and resilient food systems. Historians still argue whether the economic viability of modernizing Chinampa principles on a truly large scale is feasible outside specific lake environments, or if their full ecological benefits can only be truly replicated in their original, unique context. And equally debated is the extent to which these ancient systems can effectively mitigate the impacts of climate change without significant external investment and policy support. These questions highlight the complexity of applying ancient wisdom to contemporary problems. What's undeniable is that the silent, muddy fields of the Aztecs, those magnificent floating gardens, offer a powerful whisper from the past, a gentle reminder that some of the best solutions to our future challenges might just lie in the forgotten wisdom of ancient civilizations. As you absorb the profound global lessons whispered by the ancient Chinampas, understanding how their regenerative agricultural wisdom offers a path towards a more sustainable future. Let's now turn our gaze fully forward. Because these remarkable floating gardens are more than just a historical marvel or a struggling remnant, they hold a quiet yet powerful promise for a future food security, a testament to human ingenuity that could inspire solutions for feeding our rapidly growing world. Imagine a future where urban landscapes are not just concrete and glass, but vibrant tapestries of green, where food grows not in distant fields, but right within the city limits. The principles of Chinampa agriculture, perfected by the Aztecs, resonate deeply with the needs of our modern world. We face unprecedented challenges feeding billions, grappling with climate change, managing water scarcity, and reversing biodiversity loss. In this context, the Chinampas offer a beacon of hope, a low-tech, high-impact model for transforming seemingly unproductive spaces into engines of abundance. Consider their applications. The Chinampas demonstrate how to achieve highly intensive production in limited spaces. This is a direct parallel to modern urban farming initiatives, from rooftop gardens and vertical farms to community plots and unused lots. While vertical farms might use advanced hydroponics, the Chinampa shows us that complex technology isn't always necessary. Intelligent design and working with natural cycles can yield astonishing results. Imagine converting neglected urban wetlands or flood-prone areas into vibrant, productive foodscapes, rather than just leaving them as soggy nuisances. It's like finding out your backyard swamp is actually a hidden supermarket. Furthermore, the Chinampas offer a model for climate change adaptation. Their inherent resilience to fluctuating water levels, their efficient water use, and their potential for carbon sequestration in their rich, organic mud make them a fascinating example of climate-smart agriculture. In a world facing more extreme weather events, including both droughts and floods, systems that can adapt and thrive in varying water conditions are invaluable. They don't just survive changing climates, they often manage them. Their emphasis on local food systems is also incredibly relevant. By producing food directly adjacent to urban centers, the Chinampas drastically reduce the need for long-distance transportation, cutting down on carbon emissions and increasing food freshness and security. This fosters local resilience, empowering communities to feed themselves and lessening their reliance on fragile and global supply chains. You can almost feel the satisfaction of eating a meal whose ingredients were harvested just a short boat ride away, fresher than anything from a supermarket. A mainstream historical fact is that the core principles of Chinampa agriculture, highly intensive production in limited spaces, efficient nutrient cycling, and integrated water management are increasingly relevant for addressing contemporary challenges of food security, climate change adaptation, and sustainable urban development. Researchers globally are studying these ancient methods for modern applications. While we can't simply transport Lake Texcoco and its unique conditions to every corner of the globe, that would be a very large moving project, and probably quite messy, the principles are adaptable. It's about taking the wisdom working with nature, leveraging local resources, and creating closed-loop systems. This means applying Chinampa-inspired thinking to aquaponics, combining aquaculture and hydroponics, to integrated rice fish farming, or to wetland restoration projects that incorporate food production. It's like learning the ancient language of gardening and then applying it to new landscapes. For a quirky or fringe tidbit, imagine a future where some visionary urban planners propose bringing a form of neo-Chinampas to cities built on rivers or deltas, creating edible parks where citizens can help maintain and harvest produce from floating beds. You can almost picture a slightly exasperated city council member asking, "So, we're replacing our fountains with tiny cornfields now, and who's going to dredge the mud?" It's a humorous thought, but one that highlights the radical shift in thinking required to truly embrace this ancient wisdom. Historians still argue whether the scalability of Chinampa-inspired systems to truly global food needs is economically viable without significant subsidies, or if their optimal application remains primarily regional and local. And equally debated is the precise blend of ancient technique and modern science required for their future success. Should we rely purely on traditional methods, or integrate contemporary ecological knowledge and technologies? These questions highlight the ongoing dialogue between the past and the future. What's undeniable is that the gentle, muddy fields of the Aztecs, those magnificent floating gardens, offer a powerful whisper from the past, a quiet promise that, even in our most challenging times, the ingenuity of ancient civilizations holds profound wisdom for cultivating a more abundant, sustainable, and harmonious future. Now, as the last vibrant images of Aztec floating gardens gently recede from your mind, allow yourself to simply be. The journey has been long, stretching across millennia, from the heart of a shimmering lake city to the quiet promise of a sustainable future. Feel the gentle lull of the evening, the peaceful stillness that settles around you, drawing you into a state of deep calm. The tales of mud and water, of diligent chinamperos and bountiful harvests, have woven themselves into the fabric of your imagination, a warm blanket of history. Let the intricate details we explored tonight melt away, leaving only a sense of profound appreciation for the ingenious connections that link us to the past and to the earth beneath our feet. Your mind is now free to wander, soft and unfettered, as you drift effortlessly towards the softest sleep. Release any lingering thoughts. Let your breath grow slow and even, and allow the gentle hum of the night to carry you into the deepest, most restorative rest. All is well. All is quiet, and the whispers of ancient wisdom are gently fading into your dreams. Sweet dreams.